Welcome to the Overcome Adversity podcast. I'm your host, Michael Allison. Today's guest is Bob Thompson. This man has been through so much adversity in his life. I can't wait to get into this conversation. He's had 3 career changes due to some medical complications and surgeries that he's had in his life. I can't wait to get into this conversation, guys. Let's go. Welcome to the Overcome Adversity podcast, Bob. It's a pleasure to have you here, man.
Thanks for having me. First of all, I want to say that intro is way more professional than I am. So should I just go ahead and leave now? I mean,
Man, I'm just trying my best, man. But I'm about 1 year in, so I'm getting pretty good at it now.
I think it's phenomenal.
Thank you so much, man. Hey, man, so you've been through some heart attacks, you've been through some surgeries, and you've been through 3 career changes, as I mentioned. And I know that's not an easy task to even handle or deal with mentally, emotionally, or even physically, man. Can you tell us a little bit, how did you even get to that situation, man? Tell us about your story.
Okay. So essentially, I was a chemist for 9 years. Well, the first year and a half, I worked on the plant, and then I worked my way into the chemistry lab itself. Essentially, about 2004, I was going to go back to school for an environmental protection degree, which tells you how long ago that was. They really didn't even do environmental protection degrees. It essentially was a 2-year certificate. So I am sitting in freshman chemistry with my own lab coat with my name on it, my own supplies, because I literally do this every day for a living. And after about 2 days of classes, I am miserable. I like something finally snapped and was like, this is not where I want to be the next 15 years, 25 years of my life. I can't do this. 12-hour shifts, multiple bosses, the whole 9 yards. It was a good, steady job. And then, let's be honest, it's a job I could have had for many more years. But something just snapped, and it was like, I've got to find something else to do. And
Was that like an epiphany where like it was like not fulfilling or something at your core that was tugging at you?
yeah, I mean, it had been for quite a while. I thought perhaps if I diverted, and since they were paying for it, that I could find something within that community that I could do. And maybe it was just the job that I was currently at with the bosses I currently had. Maybe if I could shift to something that I enjoyed or was interested in, it would work better. And I realized very quickly, at the end of the day, that's not where I wanted to be in any way, shape, or form. I needed to find something else to do that I would enjoy and that I would love. And I had always had some sort of side job or side hustle. I never worked one regular job. I always had at least a full-time job and a part-time job until I was 35. Until I went real estate full-time, I was always hustling and trying to do what I needed to do.
I see.
So started looking into other options, got into real estate, actually owned 4 rental properties, and found out, number one, I wasn't a very good landlord because I was way too nice. And I just wasn't. And I was greedy. So I was trying to keep all the money myself. I should have gotten a proper property manager to come in and handle things, but I didn't. And I discovered I enjoyed the hunt for the properties, the negotiation, all of the extra stuff that goes on.
I see.
And in 2005, my ex-wife and I, we put together a 3-year plan for me to transfer over from chemistry to full-time real estate agent. And I was able to do that in 2 years. And I walked out of that plant in April of 2007. And I'm quite proud of that. And I doubled my income the first year, my first full year in real estate in 2008. And quite honestly, never looked back, and certainly don't ever regret the transition.
Nice. Congratulations, man. So, it's a major step to make a transition at such a stage in life. At 35, most people are either have figured it out or they're like on the, the back end of their career going towards like retirement or something like that. And you chose mid-career, mid-profession that I'm going to make this change. Can you elaborate a little bit about what was it like for you, I guess, mentally, just to contemplate that? Because some people might say this is a risk. So can you talk a little bit about risk taking for yourself, and how did you mitigate some of these things when it came to taking this type of risk?
Well, I mean, it was definitely a risk, but the trade-off was that I was miserable.
Hmm.
And at that point, essentially, it was just me and the wife at that time. So the kids were gone at that point. We had already raised, essentially, we raised her younger half brothers. They were twins and they had already graduated and moved
I
on.
see, I
So
see, I see.
we weren't dealing with that situation. And the way to mitigate the risk, quite honestly, was that we paid down everything that we had in the process because
Mhm.
I knew this is where I wanted to go. I felt like, okay, if I could make 25 grand part time in real estate, I should be able to make at least 45 to 50 grand full
Right,
time, which would
right.
cover my old salary. And we were able to switch over to her medical at the time. That was a good thing. So basically, we just sat about, quite honestly, doing what we probably should have been doing all along anyway, which was we paid everything off. We had double car payments at the time. We paid those off. We got all of our expenses down to a minimum. So if at worst case scenario I wasn't successful right away, then at least we were covered because I didn't have enough debt coming out every month to really hurt us overall. So it was a process, but that's what moved me forward, quite honestly. I think the other thing and where I failed at is I let too many people know what was going on. So you end up with a lot of outside negativity from people
Mm.
that jump in the middle of it, and coworkers and assorted friends and family that think they have your best interest at heart and kind of want you to do the norm, which is you've got a great job with great benefits that you can stay forever. Just suck it up and deal with it. It's just how we live our lives. And I just was not going to do that. So I had to fight against that. And even to give my ex-wife credit, even her, she had some concerns, which of course she would, because she was hearing it from her coworkers and her family, the same thing, that what is he doing? And it got worse until quite honestly, up until the day that I left, because it is 2007. We're in the middle of a recession. We've got all this other stuff going on. But at the end of the day, I had to be true to myself. I just didn't have any choice in the matter. And I was miserable. Why be miserable? There was no point to it.
Absolutely, I 1000% agree with you, man. You said something key that I will get to at some particular point in this conversation when it comes to friends and the influences of other people's opinion. But I want to jump into, man, is during all of this that was going on for you, man. You mentioned that you survived 2 heart attacks and a quadruple bypass, which is a life-altering experience. Can you walk us through when did that happen, and how did you manage to deal with that and survive that, man?
That was in 2018. I had the first heart attack. I was on my way home from my father's. My left arm was numb, so we finally pulled over to let Dana drive, and then I went to the hospital, the emergency room, and they basically swarmed me. Like, I really thought, okay, my blood pressure was high. This is not a big deal. And at 46, I mean, like I said, they came after me, and to the point where they actually put me in the night flight, and I had to take the helicopter flight to the heart hospital in Norfolk, Virginia. And I was so oblivious to the whole thing. I literally had to ask the doctor again. I was like, "Am I really having a heart attack?" And he's like, "Sir, you're having a heart attack." I was like, "Oh, okay." So I had the second one the night after my birthday in October, and then I had the quadruple bypass. And the bypass was interesting because it was supposed to be a double bypass. And I actually was quite calm about the whole thing because they came in and were like, well, you're going to have this bypass and you're going to go through rehab and all of this good stuff. But I was okay with it because at least now I knew what I needed to do. I'm much better when I have a path and I have a plan.
Yes.
And there was no ambiguity to it. There was no, well, we're going to try to put you on meds or put another stent in, and maybe this will work for 5 years, maybe it won't. I just had to suck it up and deal with it. So that's kind of what I did. I mean, it was I think the biggest thing for me that was life altering was the after effects of that, which is, you know, when you don't work, you don't get paid. I work for myself. So I felt like I was quite successful at the time and had been successful. I felt like I was monetarily in a good spot. 2017 was my best year ever. I had bought a new car in 2018, bought an RV, was quite honestly enjoying my life quite a lot, doing quite well. And by the end of 2018, I was completely flat broke. I
Wow.
mean, basically in a week and a half, Wells Fargo canceled my credit card, canceled my checking account, and repoed my car. You haven't lived until you've had your car repossessed, let me tell you. Walk out on a Sunday morning and know fully well what has happened to that car. Even though I had spoken to my creditors about what was going on, it's amazing how everybody loves you when you pay your bills on time and have good credit. And those same people very quickly will hound the crap out of you, want to know where their money is. Luckily, I was able to get the car back. I had to borrow money from my father and have an awkward conversation with him. I even needed to borrow rent money from a friend of mine. And what I learned from that was I could have done a much better job of telling people what was going on. And I tried to keep it all in and do it myself. And clearly that did not work.
Wow. Okay, let's unpack that a little bit, man, because that was a lot. So, if you can, for our listeners that do not know what it's like to actually experience a heart attack and talk about it, because most people, when they think of heart attacks or see heart attacks, they think automatically you fall on the floor and that's it, right? They don't. You went through an experience where you was having a heart attack, but you had to ask the doctor, "Am I really having a heart attack?" Can you, I guess, whatever you've learned about yourself in regards to experiencing a heart attack, can you help educate our audience and our listeners what those symptoms, what those feelings felt like as you were driving a car, had a switch with your wife that she was driving with, and tell us a little bit about that. And then, if you can, share with us a little bit about what is it, what is procedurally, what is it to have a bypass as well too when it comes to like inserting stents and different types of things inside of your body.
Well, first of all, heart attacks are nothing like we see portrayed on TV. They're not the
Right.
grab the chest and roll over. It's certainly not the Fred G. Sanford we all grew up with on Sanford and Son. Yeah, this is the big one. I'm coming to see you, Elizabeth. It's iconic, but it's not. That's not. It's not accurate. Neither one of my heart attacks were what I would consider heart attack like based on what we see on TV. Now, the first one, my left arm it was weird because it was numb and it hurt. And I had had some heartburn in the day or two before. Now, granted, I'm 46 years old. I feel like I'm in relatively good health. I'm still smoking at the time, but I never dreamed that that's what was going on. I really call it being naive, call it not really paying attention to my body. I'll agree with both of those statements. So when I went in for the first heart attack, they basically they went in and put some stents in me, which is where they open up the arteries and make sure the blood is going to flow and do all that it's supposed to do. Especially as a young man at 46, they really did not want to have to essentially crack my chest open and do all of that. The second heart attack was an over the night process where I couldn't catch my breath, but I didn't think I was, again, didn't think I was having a heart attack. And my girlfriend Dana was like, well, she asked me how I was feeling, and I didn't do a very good job of describing it because I felt like I couldn't breathe. But if I had made the statement that I felt like I was drowning, which is what felt like I was doing,
Uh-huh.
she would have known that there was a heart attack, and we would have just gone ahead and jumped up and gone to the doctor.
Ah.
Instead, we waited till that morning and went to the doctor. And again, he said, basically, you have had a second heart attack. The stents are not working. We are going to go in and do a bypass. Now, but here's where it gets interesting. They don't know what type of bypass they're going to do until they get inside. They were originally intended to be a double bypass and ended up being a quadruple bypass. Worse than that, they use the main artery in your leg. They literally pull it out of your leg and stick it in your heart, in your chest. And in my case, they could not do that. They had to use my left arm. And then my left arm got infected after the surgery was done, over the course of the next several months. So I don't know if you can see it that well, but
I can see it.
there's a massive scar that runs
Yeah.
all the way down. Now, if only I had a cool story to go with that, that would be something nice. I could tattoo it up or something, or be like, I beat up a biker gang and saved 5 children in a burning building, or. But unfortunately, I don't have any, and I'm only 5'9", so I'm not a big guy anyway. So it'd be way cooler if I could come up with some, I punched out 12 dudes in a biker gang while using a secret UFC technique on them, because, one of these deals. And that would be a complete and total lie. But it would make for a good story anyway, if you didn't know any better. But that's not the case. So that's what happened to that. That essentially my arm got infected when they took the daggone, the artery out of the vein out of there.
I got to ask you this, Bob, because you're the one of the first people that I've ever spoken to that I actually known to now have a heart attack. So after you go through all of this, does the doctors ever sit down with you? Because you said for the most part you're relatively healthy. Did they ever sit down with you and do any assessment or questionnaire or something like that, saying, well, these are some things that could have attributed to this, or was it something hereditary from that's within your family or something like that? Did they ever explain any of those things to you?
It's a combination, according to them, of genetics and just, quite honestly, just not being healthy. Not that I was overweight, but not eating well. I was eating like a teenager, and had for years, and had been able to get away with it for years. And of course, smoking certainly doesn't help that. So probably between the two of them, and that's the weird thing about genetics. My brother, my father has had a heart attack. I had my heart attacks, but my brother, his cardio is absolutely perfect, because he's gone to the doctor probably a half a dozen times. Once I had my first one, my brother immediately jumped up and was like, okay, I got to get my heart checked and figure out what's going on. Now, my brother's never smoked, and his heart's just as clean as a whistle and perfect as it can be. So it's a weird thing. And who's to say? I think the biggest thing for me is that, honestly, at that point, I wasn't going to the doctor on a regular basis, because I felt 46 was way too young. I had had no prior health problems the 3 or 4 years leading up to it, to where I wasn't even really going to the doctor. At worst case, it would be, okay, I got a cold, I would run to the the emergency doctor real quick, and okay, well, we're going to prescribe you some meds. You'll feel better from the flu in 2 days and you're good.
All right.
So just not taking care of. And if I had gone through the proper things and was getting a regular checkup, I'm sure somebody would have been like, dude, your blood pressure is high. You need to quit smoking. And I should have been making some changes way earlier than I did. So that's ultimately, it's on me.
I got you. So I want to follow up now and ask you this part, because obviously you're going through that and dealing with that, but now there's the effects of recovering, getting better. Now you have family members involved. You have a business that you're trying to run. Can you talk a little bit about managing that? And then while you're managing that, where are you mentally? How are you thinking and how are you processing things, knowing that this could bring another level of stress to you as you're going through this?
Well, since they had told me what I had to do for the rehab, I was prepared for that. I went and had to stay with my father for probably 3 weeks, which I hadn't lived with my dad since I was a young man. So that was a little bit interesting. And you figure that first week, you're very weak. So I'm literally sitting on a shower chair in the shower, hoping I can get through the shower by myself, so I don't have to ask my father to come in and take care of me, because nobody wants to do that. So I had my mindset that this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do my breathing treatments. I'm going to do my walking every day that I'm required and expected to do, so I can get better. And honest to God, stress wise, I never really got wound up about it, because I knew I had to focus on my physical recovery before I could do anything else. And again, I am naively optimistic. So I felt like, okay, well, I can start making phone calls in another week and a half, and then I can start doing other stuff. I've got some things coming up. And I really thought my creditors would take the time and work with me because again, I had good credit. I always made my payments on time. So I really felt like for whatever reason, and again, maybe I'm just naive and optimistic, I felt like there would be some exceptions that would be made. So okay, clearly we know Bob has always made his payments. We know he's going to be late, but he's also going to have some stuff coming up and he'll get back on track. So I just didn't really tell anybody what was going on until the morning that the car was gone. That's when I had to have that awkward conversation with my father. And then I had to follow up and call my buddy and just be like, they're going to throw me out of my apartment, which again, it shocked me because I had the track record that, guys, I've always paid my rent on time. You know what's wrong with me. You know I'm recovering. If you're patient with me, you will get all of your back rent and we will be right back on track. And at the end of the day, unfortunately, nobody cared. They just didn't.
As you're telling me that story, man, I think about myself as I was in some of those similar situations. No heart attack, but I had a hip surgery and I was out of work, and those people do not care one bit. And I lost a good significant amount of things that I owned, possessed, that I had business with creditors and things like that, man. And it really gives you perspective in regards to when people mean business as business and personal as personal, and they do not cross the lines when it comes to these things, man. I
No,
want to I want
I
to touch
mean,
a, go ahead, go ahead.
I mean, I to me, I felt like they could have, and it would have been, and to me, it would have made good sense because again, it wasn't like I had lost my job. This was a temporary medical issue that if I had worked a 9 to 5, I would be covered under, normal long-term care and stuff like that. And my bills would have gotten paid because I would have been getting a regular paycheck if I worked for a regular company. And again, I just felt like if they had just given me a couple of more weeks, I would have been back where I needed to be, but that certainly was not the case.
I think creditors sometimes look at things from the aspects of like, you know, I've been asked before, do I have like health insurance? Do I have like a company type of insurance? Those types of things to cover those other types of payments. And the only time I've seen anything where creditors would even think of some of those aspects is whenever they come up with like forbearance, like, but it has to be like some sort of natural disaster. But I've never seen them do anything for someone like yourself that had a medical issue and they offer any type of programs or assistance where there's some grace period or anything in between that. So I do agree with you that it's a pretty messed up situation when obviously you're someone that has great history, because that's what they look at. Whenever they're looking for your credit, is seeing your credit worthiness, is seeing how are you. So for someone that was in great standings with the company, I think it's pretty crazy to see that happen.
No, I agree. And I think long term, I mean, they don't care, but at the same time, I think long term it hurts them because I can assure you I would never go back to that company ever again in any way, shape, or form. It's not going to happen. So I think but again, they got to do what they got to do. It's water under the bridge at this point. We move on.
I totally feel the same way. Some companies I've vowed to never do business with again either. So I agree with you. I want to ask you this, man. It takes a lot for people to swallow their pride and have a good bit of humility. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because you just said you were super, super successful, making tons of money, killing it. And all of a sudden, back to back things start happening to you. And you lose money, your car, you got to ask family for rent and a place to stay. And it takes a lot to do that, especially as a man, and especially as someone you said at 46 years old, 45, 46 years old. Can you talk a little bit about going through that, and what are some lessons that it taught you about yourself? And what are some lessons that it taught you about your family members and your friends that was there in your corner as well, too, man?
Number one, I would say that again, at my, raised, especially then, I was raised to, to handle my business and take care of it and do it myself. That's just the way, that my whole generation was taught for the most part. We, as a man, call it what you want. We handle our business. We don't reach out for help. We don't do any of that. And I did that as long as I could. What I learned from that is, as I should have said something earlier than what I did. I should have opened my mouth and it would have been easier. And it would have been easier just on the people that were helping me. Like, so for instance, my father, when they repoed the car and he went to pay to get the car out of repo, he had to spend more money than he would have if he'd have just made one small payment. Then I would have been able to keep the car and we could have dragged it out for another month. And then I would have been probably close to at least being able to, we could have stretched things out.
Right, right.
Same thing with the rent. It wouldn't have gotten that far behind if I had asked for help. The thing, again, the biggest thing I learned from that is I should have let people know, my close circle, that you would think that I can rely on. I should have opened my mouth and said something, because it's a funny thing. We have certain people that in our head we know we can rely on, but to actually verbally say it, and number two, actually ask for that help, is a very hard thing to do, even though these are the people that if you pull me aside and put a gun to my head and say, okay, who's going to come help you? It's going to be, my answer is going to be, okay, it's going to be my dad. It's going to be Motley. It's going to be this person, that person, Kirk. Those are, it's going to be my boys, and it's going to be my father that are going to step up. Asking for that assistance is a whole different matter completely. And I had to learn the hard way that at the end of the day, I didn't have any choice in the matter. They were going to throw me out on my butt, and I didn't have a vehicle. So I had to do what I had to do. But again, I should have done it sooner, and I should have let the people that cared about me, that supported me, I should have let them know what was going on. And I did a terrible job of that. And that's probably the biggest thing I regret. And it's also the biggest thing that I learned, that it's okay to ask for help if you need it, regardless, because again, unusual circumstances, require an unusual answer, which is, go ask for some help.
Absolutely. So, Bob, you've been through career change, you've been through health scares, and you're here to talk about it, man. From listening to you, your story is nothing but super, super impactful and empowering. And I think you have the mindset of just persistence, resilience, and just keep on pushing. And I heard that you've also is now a mentor and a coach. So if you can, man, tell us a little bit about what you're doing now when it comes to empowering people and just helping people, man, through your story.
Well, what kind of happened was I got back up and running. And at the end of 2019, first of 2020, I had been asked to join a different real estate company and come in as a mentor and coach, because I wanted to give back. And of course, I've been a successful real estate agent for years. So that opportunity, quite honestly, turned out to not be what I was told it was. But I was able to go out and do some mentoring and do some coaching. And I found that I really enjoyed that. Since then, I have transitioned into public speaking. I gave a speech for the business department at Regent University in Norfolk, Virginia, a couple of weeks ago. And for whatever reason, folks have decided that I have something important to say, and they're listening to it. And I enjoy it. I think it's a combination of my attitude is persistent progress and doing self-checks to be able to transition to the next spot. And I think it's important for people to understand that, you can make changes and be successful in your life. And you're not set in a certain way. You can make changes anytime you want, whether it's at 35, whether it's at 25. I think it's important that young people understand that it's important to network. It's important to physically talk to people. I know we all like to hide behind our phones now, and I get that. I'll give a good example of that real quick. Is I was at, I got a buddy of mine that runs Miami Web Fest, and I was there with him in 2021.
Mhm.
We were down in Florida, and we had a meet and greet Thursday night. All of the top people in Miami are there. That's part of the film and TV community. And we've got about 10 to 12 interns that are volunteering and helping out. And we had made it very clear to the interns, by all means, talk to anybody you want to. If you want to get introduced to anybody, just let us know. We'll make the introductions. Not a big deal. And I look over and like 4 or 5 of the interns are sitting there talking to each other and they're on their phone. And I walk over, I'm like, guys, what are you doing? These are all of these kids are in film schools. This is where they want to be. We've handed it to you on a silver platter and you're ignoring it. I talked to a lady that was on the Cuban boat lift at 6 years of age that was making a documentary and talking about how her father was a political prisoner in Cuba. I could have talked to that woman all night long. And the only reason I got the chance to is because I happened to be in the same room with her and walked up to her and asked her if she was doing okay and if she needed anything. And these interns have all of these opportunities. And I was just like, guys, it may end up not being worth your time, but you won't know until you try.
Until you try.
What's the point of you being here? You've been given an opportunity. And I've also tried to teach people that at worst case, if you meet somebody that, you think is important and they end up being a jerk, well, at least but if it goes well, at worst case, you've got a cool story. I got to meet, DJ EFN and those guys from the Drink Champs podcast.
Drink Champs,
and,
yeah.
Yeah. And I'm an old school hip hop guy. So we're talking about old school hip hop from Virginia, like the Lady of Rage and stuff like that. And I'm having a blast. Now, those guys aren't going to know me from Adam if they see me again, but I'm going to remember it. It's a cool story for me, and it's a cool experience that I'll always have. And sometimes it just comes down to, hey, I got a cool experience and a cool story out of my life, and I'm okay with that. And I think people need to understand that.
Absolutely, man. As we get ready to wrap up here, man, can you tell us some of the things that you're living by now? So what are some of your principles and your values, and what are some like your daily habits, man, that has led to this transformation, man, that you share with our audience that could just take away?
Well, I would honestly say that one of my daily transformations is sometimes I have to take a nap because my body tells me otherwise, that I'm not getting up and moving. And I've learned to accept what my body is telling me. And like yesterday, I was not having what I would call a good health day. I was exhausted. I was tired. So I went and laid down and took a nap for a little while. And then I felt better afterwards. But sometimes your body's going to talk to you and you need to listen. And that's pretty much at any age, quite honestly. That's just how we're built. We've got to do that. For me, I preach persistent progress and self-checks. I talk about that, on my website and my course I've got coming out. Make little goals and just follow through on your little goals that you're accomplishing. The other thing that I talk about a lot is, and I learned the hard way, is training in the dark. When you're starting a new process or you're transitioning from one career to the other, or just jumping into something that you just want to try, you don't need to tell everybody your business because there's a lot of negativity out there. There's a lot of people that aren't necessarily happy in their own world, so they want to take it out on you, or they're unable to or don't want to make a transition or make a change in their life. So they would rather, walk you back down the plank, as it were, instead of moving forward themselves. So you've got to deal with that.
So how do you define success now, man? Because I know that you have new goals, you have new aspirations. So how do you define success in regards to what are you trying to aim for next, man?
So for me, you figure, again, after almost dying multiple times, there's about 10 or 15 people in this world whose opinions that I care about. And at the end of the day, if you like me, you'd like me. If you don't, you don't. I will survive. I don't care. So I try to come across with honesty across the board. Not that I wasn't doing it before, but if anything, I go almost a little overboard with it now, to where when it comes to the real estate stuff, I'll get in trouble because I can be the anti-real estate agent because I don't do all the fluff, and I will kind of make fun of it, quite honestly. And I'm okay with that. What I would define as success for me would be as I want to get to the next level, I would like to, I've started on the speaking path and I would like to continue to go down that path. I have no desire to be the next Tony Robbins in any way, shape, or form. Although I would like to be the next Les Brown because I love what Les has to say, and his voice and his thoughts resonate with me. He just always has. So that's ultimately where I would like to go. And at the end of the day, I do the podcast and I'm doing what I'm doing because, I get a thrill even if just one person sends me a message or heck calls me on the phone and gets one little nugget of inspiration out of something that I say. then I'm happy. I've done what I'm supposed to do. And to me, that's enough success as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to live my life and do what I do, and try to have some more cool experiences along the way.
Most definitely, man. If you don't know Bob, I like you, bro. So you can add number 11 to your list, man.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, man, for our audience, man, before we get out of here, man, you have such a great story, man. What are some key takeaways, some key lessons that they could implement into their lives today, man?
I'm going to tell you what I was told years ago by my first broker and team leader. And I will give the man credit for this to this day, and always will. 2018, probably January of 2018, I had switched to a new company, and we were arguing over why I had a house that wasn't selling. And I'm arguing with him. And finally he looks at me, he goes, "How many houses have you sold?" And I started stuttering and fluttering, because at that point I ain't really accomplished a whole lot. And he goes, "My name is on the billboard. It's my team. It's my brokerage. I'm the expert. Why are you arguing with me?" And like the light bulb went on. It was like, oh, good Lord, he's right. What am I doing? So listen to people that know better than you. Now, granted, you can always get a second opinion, of course. And we all do it. I mean, I describe it to watching football on a Sunday and going, "I can't believe they ran that play. They should have done this." I don't know what they should have or shouldn't done. I didn't play high school football, but most of us will sit there and argue over why the team is losing. And this is the reason, when quite honestly, we don't really know. But, so that's a big one for me. The other thing I think, again, is just do your self check, think about and realize where you are, and find your people and keep moving forward. You have nothing to lose. I mean, if you fail, you fail. Get up and do it again. I mean, we don't see the journey. We only see the end result. We don't see the hours of work that are put in. And that's for anybody. And I'm guilty of it, where I'll see, because I'm a dude, and I'll see some, makeup tutorial TikTok thing, and I'll laugh and giggle. Well, but I don't know the hours that person put into doing that. And I don't know, where they are on their level of what they consider success. And it's easy for me to make a snide remark, because I'm not the one doing that. But the fact of the matter is, they're doing their thing, and I need to respect that. So that's the other thing, is that you don't see the journey. You just got to keep moving forward, and you'll kind of know when you get there.
Man, thank you for those words, Bob. If anybody wanted to work with you, book you on a podcast, or call you for a speaking engagement, man, how can I get a hold of you?
Well, shameless plug would be whatbobthinks.com and What Bob Thinks on Facebook. They can always reach out to me there. I've got a new course that's going to be out probably about another week away. I would say that'll be done. And I'm old school. You can also, quite honestly, find my information. You can reach out and give me a phone call at 757-403-5401. I'm old school. I answer the phone. I'm kind of weird like that. Send me a text, call me on the phone. If I can't talk, I'll let you know, and we can reconvene there, from there later. So just reach out and say hello. I got no problems with that.
Absolutely. Well, Bob, it's been an absolute pleasure, man, to have you as a guest on Overcoming Adversity podcast, man. Do you have any last words for our audience?
Just, like I said, reach out if you need me. Keep doing what you're doing. And the biggest thing I would say is, again, you only go around this world one time. So I don't care if you're 28, 38, 58, 1,008, whatever, if you want to do something, go and try and do it. Find your people to help you with it. But at worst case, if you fail, at least you'll know and you tried.
Absolutely. Well, Bob, it's been an absolute pleasure, man, to hear your story of how you overcame adversity. Guys, if you like this episode, make sure you leave a comment. If you know a family member that this episode could value to, make sure you share it. Give us a thumbs up, guys. Until next time, God bless.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Can't complain at all. Couple dollars in my pocket, no income and go. Been working on my body, getting healthier. Thank God for clarity.